When entering the world of games, people can become whoever they desire, such as a young character, regardless of their real-life age. This allows them to do things they can't outside the game, which is why these games are so wonderful. The 38-year-old protagonist starts by creating his character to begin a game called One More Free Life Online. He names his avatar Earth and makes him look quite youthful, approximately his real-life age, not forgetting his black hair and eyes. In reality, he was just an ordinary salaryman who could only spare 2 or 3 hours a day for gaming. Therefore, he preferred playing alone to avoid inconveniencing other players. For this reason, he builds his character to be unattractive, even selecting so-called trash abilities. Out of the 10 abilities he chooses, 6 are quite poor, like a bow that never hits its target and the herbalist skill, which is unnecessary in the game since anyone can buy cheap potions from an NPC. He also takes his skill for an extremely weak kick, wind magic that doesn't work against fire or earth elements, and concealment, which has a high MP cost. Lastly, he takes physical skills enhancement, which can be used for running, using weapons, and crafting, but is superficial. He finalizes his character with the intention of being avoided by other players and enjoying peace. And so Earth begins playing One More Free Life Online, where the objective is simply to enjoy life. As it's not a game with a grand mission like defeating the Demon King, players can do as they please, whether it's fighting monsters, crafting items, or just chatting with others, living a carefree life. He starts in a bustling area where a girl named Mian offers to sell him some equipment. However, Earth suddenly collides with a troublemaker player wearing golden armor and accompanied by a group of Mohawks. He mocks Earth for using a useless bow and kicks him, acting quite unnecessarily before leaving. Subsequently, Earth continues to the training center, where he decides to hone his archery skills. However, the bow is so terrible that even after multiple attempts, he doesn't come close to hitting the target. But after shooting about 100 arrows, he finally begins to make progress, hitting the target and reaching level 5 in that skill. Next, Earth trains his wind magic and his kick, and after learning the minimum he needs, he heads out to the field. But upon arriving, he encounters chaos and thinks it's better to focus on collecting herbs for now. So Earth sets out in search of his collection, using his distance vision to locate some of the herbs. However, he realizes he can't analyze them right away. It doesn't take him long to raise his herbalist skill to level 3, allowing him to see the categories of each plant. With this, he can analyze their functions, discovering that he had collected 2 herbs that momentarily stopped breathing, wondering why the game placed them in an initial area. Afterward, Earth buys a beginner's potion production set at the potion shop to make a healing potion. He follows all the necessary steps, obtaining the item he wanted. In that game, after producing the item, you could choose the option to produce in bulk, making several items at once. Then he makes an antidote as well, raising the herbalist skill to level 7. With the healing potion and antidote ready, he returns to the field for his first hunt, glad to see the place had finally emptied. Suddenly, Earth spots a horned rabbit. He concentrates to hit the small creature on the first try since he couldn't shoot in sequence with his bow. However, the rabbit senses his presence, dodges the arrow, and attacks Earth. The boy then launches another arrow, hitting the animal's leg, but this only makes the rabbit angrier. With no other choice, Earth gives up on his bow and uses his kicking ability to protect himself. After kicking the rabbit twice, he finally manages to successfully finish his first hunt, obtaining the monster's skin and meat. He thinks that this way he'll end up becoming an expert in kicking rather than archery, when he's startled by 2 players who had witnessed his hunt. They introduce themselves as Zwei and Millie and add Earth to their friend list. Later, Earth continues his hunting to gain more experience and reduce the time it takes to defeat a monster. He locates another horned rabbit, but just like the previous one, it notices his presence and flees, forcing Earth to give up on using his bow and try another skill, using his wind magic to hit the monster. He thinks of a way to hide his presence, remembering he had the concealment ability. So by activating this skill, Earth finally manages to hunt with his bow, surprised at how well that combination worked. However, despite wanting to play all night, it was already late in the day, and he needed to get some rest for work the next day. And so after working, Earth returns to the game. He buys a piece of bread from an NPC, but it tastes bad. Since he can taste the game's food, Earth decides to cook something more appetizing. He cooks a horned rabbit meat, but it turns out extremely tough. Therefore, he prepares another piece of meat, testing a different way to cook the dish, which turns out much better than the previous one. Then Earth continues cooking to further improve his culinary skill in the game until he makes a dish with such a delicious aroma that it attracts several players who are nearby. Before he knows it, Earth realizes there is a crowd willing to pay a good price for a plate of steak, shelling out 20 times what he paid for a piece of bread. However, people were hungry and impatient, leaving Earth desperate to cook as many dishes as possible, until after cooking several times, he reaches level 20 in that skill, gaining the power of fast cooking. With this, he manages to quickly fulfill orders until that nightmare is over. Later, he decides to make a better bow to use in his hunts since there was no demand for that type of weapon, and he had to create one himself. After some time chopping wood and more, Earth finally finishes his new bow, which, while still a weak weapon against monsters, was better than the beginner's bow he had. However, he decides to experiment with strengthening the bow using more wood, making the weapon slightly more potent. Satisfied with his work, Earth goes to buy some armor. He then analyzes the levels of each skill, seeing that he was already at level 25 in cooking. Suddenly, he remembers that he had just spent most of his money to buy the armor. So to recoup that money, he decides to use the game's vending machines to try selling grape-flavor healing potions to see if players would like them. Later, he heads out to the field to hunt some monsters, and while analyzing the ones nearby, he chooses the nearest wolf. After activating concealment, he shoots with his bow. Earth then proceeds to his next hunt, training his kick and wind magic as well. He defeats several monsters, acquiring various types of items and increasing the levels of his 3 attacks. However, after hunting so much, he runs out of arrows and decides to call it a day. When he returns, he sees that some players had already gone to the vending machine and bought his grape potion, with some comments expressing their approval and requesting more, which makes Earth quite happy. But when he arrives in town, he is confronted with a desperate crowd in search of healing potions. This puzzles Earth as they could buy as many potions as they wanted from the NPCs. To understand what was happening, he calls Zwei. Earth tells him that when he returned from hunting, all the players in town were searching for potions. Zwei explains that not long ago, the NPCs announced that the potions had run out, causing everyone to frantically search for more. Zwei then warns that this situation will likely fall on Earth as he had just sold potion juice. Only at that moment does Earth realize that his friend was right, as he was already surrounded by players eager to buy some of his potion. Earth tries to calm the people down by explaining that since there are so many of them, he'll have to set a purchase limit for each player, allowing each to take 5 potions. Everyone is thrilled with the number, but impatient ones quickly appear, urging Earth. Fortunately, Zwei and Millie step in to help, with him organizing the people while she handles the accounting. This leaves Earth to focus solely on production. Since very few players had the herbalist skill, which allowed them to make potions as it had been considered a useless skill, until that moment, Earth is quite overwhelmed, working tirelessly to avoid player disputes over the lack of potions. He activates the mass production capability, but after a long time making potions, his medicinal herbs run out. So he informs the players that he can only sell the remaining potions, which won't be enough for everyone. People understand the situation and ask Earth to make more potions the next day. But at that moment, the troublemaker player appears, accompanied by his group of Mohawks, and demands that Earth hand over all the healing potions to him. Earth explains that the few remaining potions were for the people waiting in line, but the player is not willing to accept no for an answer. Zwei tries to maintain order, but the guy punches him, causing him to fall to the ground, making it clear what would happen if Earth opposed him. However, Earth shows that the guy's attitude was annoying the other players. He then offers to pay for the potions, but Earth says that's not the problem, as cutting in line would make him unpopular with other players, including the producers, which would certainly hinder his ability to buy essential in-game items like weapons and armor. Therefore, it's crucial to maintain a good relationship with other players. Instead of listening to Earth's advice, the guy challenges him to a duel to prove he's superior to a mere archer. Zwei tells Earth not to accept the challenge, but he's not willing to run away from the fight and let an aggressive player like that come out on top. So Earth accepts the duel and decides to take advantage of the player's confidence to spot his weaknesses. As soon as the fight begins, the player attacks with his sword, but Earth dodges the blow and launches a kick, followed by 2 arrows, ending the duel rather quickly. Immediately, his friends flee with the unconscious player, and everyone celebrates Earth's victory. Seeing his potential, Zwei and Millie decide to invite Earth to join their group. Then, after notifying all the players that he will continue to make potions the next day, Earth logs out of the game. He thinks about how the group of Mohawks should be shunned by production players due to their unnecessary attitude. As soon as he leaves his room, Zwei sends him a message, asking if Earth is interested in forming a group. A few days after the incident with the lack of potions, the herbalist skill was revived in the game. After all, it had become a useful skill due to the item limit imposed on NPC sales. And so the protagonist started the game as usual, but this would be the first day that Earth would be part of a group in that world, joining Zwei's team called Blue. Since Earth only knew Zwei and Millie from the group, the other members introduced themselves to him. One of them was a girl named Nora, who claimed to be skilled in melee combat due to her sword. Next, he met Rage, a tank wielding an axe and shield responsible for drawing enemy attacks. Finally, Earth met Casimine, a one-handed swordsman. After getting to know everyone, Earth began to introduce himself. However, everyone already knew he was an archer, and Zwei explained that he had become quite famous among players after winning the duel against the Mohawk guy. So he skipped the introductions but asked if the group was indeed balanced since they had 4 frontline members, Millie as a magic user and himself as an archer. The group explained that Millie could use magic with various attributes including damage dealing, and that Nora could also use healing magic, providing support during melee combat. They explained that they were determined to hunt a wild bear, even though it was a very tough enemy in the game. Earth couldn't help but wonder where all this confidence came from. He mentioned it would be his first time hunting a bear and expressed his concerns, as the bear was known to be fast and intelligent. But no one seemed willing to back down from the challenge, agreeing to go for the hunt and then enjoy a delicious meal prepared by Earth. And so the archer participated in his first team hunt. He used his long-range vision to analyze the nearby enemies, noticing that all the wild bears were traveling in groups. Eventually, he found one that was alone. With the target located, they decided to lure the bear to a more advantageous location for their fight. The blue team recognized that Earth had just joined, that he was already being helpful. Millie cast a spell on Zwei, and Earth explained that he would move away to use his concealment skill. They sprang into action, with Earth firing his first arrow. However, this only enraged the wild bear. Rage performed his role, drawing the enemy's attention. In the game's battle mechanics, there was a hidden parameter called Hate, where the monster demonstrated its anger and rage. A high defense tank attracted all the hate to protect the other players. While Earth moved to a safe distance to keep the creature in his sights, Rage still took some damage from the bear, as it was a formidable foe. However, Millie promptly aided him with her healing magic. Nora asked him to keep the bear's attention on her for attacking, but they soon realized that the monster's hide was tough and resistant to their weapons. Even Nora and the others found it challenging to pierce through. Millie's magic finally dealt some damage to the creature. The battle continued, with Rage maintaining the bear's focus on him, while Nora provided healing support to mitigate the damage. However, the group started to realize that they might have rushed into confronting such a powerful enemy. Their weapons had limited effect on the bear, and Nora was running low on MP for healing. Earth understood that the team needed a quick and precise decision. He decided to trust his 38 years of life experience and aim for the bear's forehead, hoping it might be a weak spot, determined to help his team. Earth's arrow hit the bear, but it only made the bear angrier, and they all began to worry that they might not survive this hunt. However, Earth hoped that the arrow had failed because it was too shallow and decided to use his last resort. He activated a spell he acquired at level 15 of wind magic, needing to act quickly since it only lasts for 10 seconds. With this, Earth significantly increases his speed, intensifying his kicking power to push the arrow and pierce the bear's forehead. Next, Zwei shouts for Millie to attack, and she once again casts her magic, allowing the team to finally succeed in that hunt and put an end to the wild bear. Zwei apologizes for suggesting they go after a wild bear, acknowledging that it wasn't a good decision. However, Earth says that everything turned out well, and now it's time for them to enjoy the new dish he prepared, which excites them all. And so, they all enjoy a wolf skewer, savoring the seasonings that Earth used to prepare the meal. Zwei wonders why he's the only one not given a skewer, having to settle for a mere piece of bread. After teasing his friend for a bit, Earth finally admits he was just joking, giving Zwei a skewer and making him very happy. He savors the meat, enamored with the taste, and Nora asks Earth if the recipe for the food is expensive. He explains that in reality there's no way to obtain recipes through exchange because it's become a secret understanding among producers not to sell recipes. He mentions that first of all, it takes a lot of money and time to create a recipe, and secondly, even with a recipe, the result of the food can vary because it depends on the effort and ingenuity of the person who made it. For these reasons, the game's producers concluded that it's impossible to imitate the quality of other players' production. So since they can't buy Earth's meat skewer recipe, Zwei suggests they pay a low price for him to cook for their team, which irritates Earth as it's not right to place a value on someone else's work, but it makes the rest of the team very happy. At the end of the day, Earth adds the other members of the group as friends and continues the rest of his journey alone, hunting other enemies and expanding the game's area by heading to the forest of the 5th area. There, he encounters new monsters like giant insects. He tries to hit one of them with his bow but ends up missing and hitting an ant instead, leaving it agitated. This is a swift ant with a connection ability, and quickly, it calls his fellow ants. Even though he's in trouble, Earth decides to fight using his kicks. However, he discovers that these insects have a retaliation damage effect, which makes his body numb. After receiving a lot of attacks from the ants, Earth ends up dying and is automatically transported back to the city. Upon arriving there, he receives a game notification informing all players that they will soon have a major update called the Fairy Dance, which will introduce new skills and arts, expand production possibilities, and give each player a fairy to assist in battles and other tasks. Earth realizes it's not a good time to receive a death penalty, as soon everyone will be leveling up with this update. He trains hard to acquire the blacksmithing skill, which will allow him to improve his attacks and craft a more efficient arrow against the swift ant. After some work, Earth manages to create an iron arrow with a triangular shape, with an attack power of 6, and after a few adjustments, he finalizes it with an apple-shaped tip, increasing the arrow's attack power to 8. Next, he decides to create equipment to enhance his kicking power because besides being a weak attack, it's not effective against enemies that can deal retaliation damage. After some thought, Earth decides to add spikes to the soles of his shoes and blades on the sides. As he works on his new gear, another player named Black asks what he's doing. After some time, both of them see the final result, and Black admits he's never seen a kick assist item like that. Other players also admire the creative shoe weapon. Then Earth goes to buy a bowstring from Myun, who finds his new shoes rather eerie for a cook. Afterward, he searches for a new bow, aiming to upgrade it now that he's reached level 30 in that skill. He evaluates his 3 options, first considering the short bow, which is easy to use but has limited range, which he dismisses as he's not good in close-range fights. Then he looks at the long bow, which offers more range and power but takes a long time to draw, which isn't suitable for solo play. This leaves Earth with the hunting bow, which has good size and shooting range. He specializes in this advanced skill, reaching level 1. With everything prepared, Earth names his new weapon the Hunting Composite Bow X, and when he tests it, he notices the improvement in his weapon, bidding farewell to the old one, which despite being inferior to the current one, had been useful to him until that point. Now that he has improved, he goes in search of a swift ant. Combining wind magic with the bow, he defeats the enemy with 2 shots. He continues hunting more insects, getting his revenge and collecting plenty of ant exoskeletons, which can be used to create lightweight armor. He takes the material to Myun, who is an armor craftswoman. Then the game announces that the fairy dance is about to begin, and the first part of that stage is each player receiving an auxiliary fairy. Earth receives his contract crystal, which contains his fairy. He hopes to get a wind-based one to complement his abilities. However, when he begins the ritual, the crystal shatters and no fairy appears, leaving him frustrated. At that moment, he receives a call from Zwei, asking him to meet up with the group. When he arrives, he shows the result of his crystal and asks if this happened to Zwei, but Zwei shows he has his fairy, as does everyone else, each of them having received a little companion. In other words, Earth is the only one without a fairy. To lift his spirits, Millie tells him not to give up as they're only in the first part of the mission. And since his crystal hasn't disappeared, there must be another chance for him to make the contract. She believes that there's probably something in the second part of the mission, which encourages Earth to remain hopeful. However, they don't understand why their fairies liked him so much and are a bit jealous of it. Earth finds them all very cute and hopes he can get his own fairies soon.